for all you know, they may do a better job of adopting these guidelines that we keep talking about than the rest of the people who are actually able to consume it but not able to understand or appreciate it. Right? So trying to be as inclusive as possible.
Sure. But very honestly, even if I reach out to the same segment of an educated workforce, it is so large, and the girls still need so much more of mentoring and just that feel of I can do it kind of stuff. I mean, I don't know if you watched the recent serials, much talked about serials about a suitable girl and some matchmaking. Bizarre, right? While it's bizarre, it is very authentic. I mean, it's very true. And that's why it hurts us. I mean, it rankled me because it's so true and it's so existent even now that, if we reach out to them, and there is this girl who says, I'm a media company, but, if they allow me, I will continue. I'm like, oh my God, the birds have not this is real. That's really tragic. And I see just decades and decades of it. So, I mean, what are we talking about? Those who have lesser opportunity. I'm talking about ones who are educated and who have the opportunity to do it, who still are giving it up.
Write that as a question. Wait, that's an additional question I'll ask you.
About the suitable girl.
But this is a revelation, Nandita, that you watched matchmaking.
No,
did you watch all of that? All of it?
No, I didn't watch all of it. But, it was so talked about. And it had a pull. I mean, to be very honest, it sort of gets you in. Because she is talking with so much conviction. I mean, that lady, I think she's really a matchmaker or something. She spoke with so much of conviction that this is what you have to do. And I'm looking at her and I'm remembering, I thought that was during my time.
Right.
My kids definitely are not in that time. So, I mean, they won't even watch those serials. They won't even relate to it, kind of stuff. But I know that there are, millions of them who are still relating to that.
No, absolutely.
It just doesn't go away. I mean, this it's quite bizarre. It's not easy to get out of those shackles, I guess.
No, but one experience that I have had is spent about like 10 to 12 years outside India. And when we came back, I actually realized that India has advanced way lot more than how we were advancing as an Indian community outside India. A lot of stereotypes were kept so close-knit in the community there because somewhere you're still living in a time capsule. That the time when parents left this country, they remember everything that was happening in the society, right? And they wanted to preserve it, that when we go back, or every year when we are going back to visit our relatives, our grandparents and everybody, they should still be able to see that Indian value system ingrained in us. Right? They work extra hard to make sure that you celebrate all the festivals. You
Absolutely.
remember.
Even now.
And I was, so in Philippines, there's a very strong hold of Sindhi community. And most of my friends were from that circle only. And I know that arranged marriage is still very much a real concept there.
No, even in India it is. But this girl still, has a chance to say no, or, I'm hoping that, it's a thing, right? At least I don't know. Very honestly, Pallavi, we have no idea of what India is because it's so diverse, such a paradox. I mean, you just can't say that this is India. All of them are India. I mean, the many Indias. There's a highly educated, very forward-looking India, which is taking it forward, and then there is this whole backward. What do they call it? What killing is that?
Honor killing.
Huh? Honor killing. I mean, I mean, you can't even relate to such things. I mean, a father and a brother doing it. I mean, it's so we are all of it, right? I mean, all of it constitute the country.
No,
so
absolutely.
One part being stronger than the other.
This is what we tell companies when they say that everyone is aligned, everyone is in the same space, and we find it very difficult because when you're talking about hiring people from different parts of the country, everybody from a different social strata, schooling, public school, private school, Did they have any sibling of other gender or not? What was the social profile of their families? Which were they part of a city, urban, metro, suburban, village? Where there's so much that goes into making a person, that just because now they have gone through 1 hour of reading of your company's HR manual, and you say that ab hamare hain, like now they're aligned with us, it's not going to happen.
No, it's not that.
The roots are very deep, very, very deep.
Yeah, very cool.
That's how it is. That is how it is. And some of my friends who are not part of the gender mainstream work, when we tell them that, oh, do you know this happened today, that happened today? Honor killing is one thing, right? And somebody was arguing on social media today about sati pratha still continuing, and was very hell-bent on arguing that Hindus never did that. And there was this huge debate that was going on. It's just that for somebody who has never been part of this world, they will not believe that this thing ever happened, or this still is happening in some parts of the country. Whereas the diversity that we're talking about and the different time capsule that people are stuck in, some of the practices are still continuing.
Yes.
And some have evolved. For I think from a societal way, somebody has to go deep and understand how exactly what makes these small clusters of society evolve, and what's happening with the rest of the ones, because education has definitely not been able to change it.
No, education is not. I mean, they say there is a distinction between education and literacy, right? So I think people are getting literate, but they're not really getting educated. They're not transforming their mindset. It takes much longer to get there. Oh, are we there? It's already 5.
Are we good to start?
Yes, we are good to start.
Just hold on. I'll just go live.
Oh, and I'm not recording. Okay, you're already recording.
Yeah. Could you also record though?
Yes, ma'am. I don't have permission.
Okay, 1 second. I'm just going live.
Ritu, you will tell us, right?
I will. I'm just writing the heading of the...
I was just checking if connection is fine.
Just keep like yourself on, either you or Nandita on the main frame.
I will do that. I'll do that.
Because otherwise it takes whoever is, it'll take my...
I can't do that. It's on speaker view right now. So as soon as you stop speaking.
I'll stop speaking.
No.
Say something?
Yeah, I'm saying something. There.
Your life.
Okay, so you're good to go. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today in our, I think, one of the most special conversation that I would say from my end, our conversation with leaders, where we have Nandita Gurjar. I don't even know if the 2 decades or more than 2 decades of work experience, Nandita, that you have gone through. We'll be able to cover it all in this 1 hour, but we'll try and extract as much as possible. You have been the global head of Infosys Group, especially in the HR domain. You have been a former member of World Economic Forum. Currently, you're advising SBI's Leadership Academy, and at the same time, you are part of the advisory board of so many other organizations, and especially startups, guiding them to be a much better organization than they can be. So thank you so much for taking out your time, very precious time, and spending the next 1 hour talking to us about workplace and inclusion, and especially about women's role.
Thank you. Thanks, Pallavi.
Nandita, my first, I was reading through the entire journey, and I noticed that you started your first job as a software programmer. So you are a techie. I'll put you in women in tech category. Is that correct?
Well, most of my life was not, I was in tech, but not really in the programming or, from the business side. I moved over to HR, I think 3 to 4 years of being in the software space, but still very much in tech, all my life in tech.
Okay. And here we are, right? After wherever the journey started so many years ago, here we are where when we see your name and we read the text by you and articles by you, and we hear you in so many leadership conversations. The two words that, have always stood out, at least at my end, and I have seen in general conversations also, every time that we have talked about women, are jobs and career. A woman being able to have a job and a woman being able to have a career. Now, here's my question to you. From your own experience and everything that you have observed and experienced, right? How do you see these two phrases, and how would you suggest the world or the economy or the people who are there sitting on the other side of the table who are making these decisions for women's ability to be more participative in the economy, to understand the distinction between these two words?
Sure. So I think a job is very easy to define. It's a more acceptable term, especially for a woman, because people believe that we take up jobs because we need the money to run our homes, and that the finances are useful, and therefore most women justify that taking up a job is something which she needs to do for the betterment of her family, right? The career, on the other hand, and this I speak even from personal experience, is something which seems to be a selfish thing which a woman does. It seems okay for a man to do, but it's very difficult for a woman to say that I want a career, because it means that I want to do something which boosts my self-esteem. This is more beyond money. And this is about moving up the ladder or joining in the power struggle along with men, right? They are totally different things, right? You will find more and more women walk into jobs and who are more willing to stay in jobs all their life, right? Not flip into a career. So there is quite a sad statistic which says that 83% of women, when they were asked, and this is a US study, when they were asked if they will take the job of their boss, if given, said no. 83%.
Wow.
And the reason they said that was multifold. I mean, one is they said that it moves from becoming a job to a career. It means that I need to spend more time, higher commitment of myself. Again, another study says that women spend two-thirds of house chores are done by women. Only 1/10 of child rearing is done by a man, which means again it falls into the women's bucket. Now, if she has to do almost 100% of the home, then take up a job, commute to work, manage the office politics, manage the work, manage this overarching feel that you're a minority, you're not valued, people don't listen to you. And then you ask them the question saying, really, you don't want to stay here longer? And she says, no, I don't.
You're not serious about the work also.
Yes.
Right?
Well, I mean, they come and do the work, of course. I find that there is a high degree of commitment there. But when asked if you want to take on more responsibilities, and join this whole rat race, most of them are hesitant enough to say, no, I'm okay being second. Let him get the promotion. I'm okay being second. And I think that mentality really needs to change for women to say that I'm not just going in for a job, I'm here to build a career.
But that is associated with the gender norms also, right? For example, we keep hearing two different schools of thoughts on this one. One that says that as long as you don't bring your gender in the workspace, you will grow. Like it's a fault of the woman that she starts talking about the limitation in her life, and these are limitations, or these are the circumstances. Let's change the narrative. This is the circumstance in the life, right? And everybody is dealing with it because the social strata that we are all part of, families require the primary attention is still taken by the family and not the work. So as long as you don't bring your gender in the workplace, growth is unlimited. Sky is the limit, right? And you can be anything that you want to be as you grow. And on the other hand, what is being talked about, another school of thought is that it does not matter whether they are bringing their gender in the workplace or not. What you should instead do is create special provisions, keeping in mind that you are dealing with two different, and I'm just keeping it limited to binary gender right now. I'm not going beyond binary, keeping the conversation a little traditional right now, that as long as you know that there are two different genders which are going to be interacting in my workplace, let me understand what are the limitations and circumstances of each of them. And if you need to make certain changes and create new provisions, then create and then let them grow. Right. So in your understanding and in your experience, Nandita, how exactly would you tell organizations, how exactly will we say that for women, should they actually, and is it even possible to leave your gender outside the workplace?
Now, firstly, I think it's very insulting to be asked to leave your gender outside. It's like asking a man to leave his gender outside. It's not changing into, a third person when he comes in, right? So I don't think anyone needs to leave the gender outside. The belief that, you ask the women to say, don't bring your problems to the workplace. And, if you do not discuss your problems, then, the sky is the limit, is like saying that I'm going to chain you, but why can't you run? Right? We have to become more inclusive in workplaces. And inclusive means that we genuinely need to understand the necessity for having more and more women in the workplace. One is, of course, the enlarging of the talent pool itself. I mean, today there is this whole war for talent which goes on. You are working with the same kind of talent pool and everybody wants it. If you enlarge that talent pool, everybody gets a large part of it, your costs go down. It's a win-win situation for both employers and employees. So, I mean, that's the number one. Two is inclusivity and diversity bring in a different perspective, which is critical because it represents your customers, it represents your stakeholders of the organization, and therefore you can't have blind spots in the company by saying that, I have 10% women and all the 90% are men. I mean, you're walking almost on dangerous territory. So far, it has been okay. But as more and more women become financially independent, they are strong customers and therefore will require a representation in your workplace. So what are some of the things which organizations therefore can do is to actually have an affirmation policy which says that we want to treat and give equal opportunity to both men and women. And neither the man needs to change, the woman needs to change. We just need to respect that they both have differences, they both have a lot of similarities, and therefore we will create a workplace which is conducive to both. So one big example of it, I mean, which people talk about is, what do you do with the children? Because that's really where, at the entry level, you see today a lot of women who are entering the workforce. And, even if they are about 50% in, at the entry level, By the time they come to the top, they're almost at 2 or 3%. So somewhere along the line, they have disappeared, right? And they've disappeared because they just cannot manage, the home front and their work. I blame, and let me be controversial here, I blame women for this. Because when women have decided that they are going to enter the workplace, which was largely dominated by men, it is also very important for her to allow men to enter into her world, which is the home, the kitchen, and the children.
That's true.
Most women will come out with saying, oh no, my husband just cannot manage the children, he just cannot manage the home, and he is so inadequate there, and therefore I have to be superwoman, and I have to do this, and I have to do that. I mean, you're kidding yourself. They make wonderful parents. Men can handle the kitchen better, they can manage the house better, they might not manage it exactly the way you want them to. True. But they will do fine. And unless you start that with this generation, you're not going to get there. I mean, it will take a couple of years for them to, sort of level up to your level of excellence. But, after that, you're equal partners. And I think the problem here is that women have continued to say, either with guilt or because, they have not allowed the men to come in, saying that, no, I'm going to do it all. And if you do, you can't do it all. I mean, no one can do it all, right? And that's why you struggle. And then when you have to give up, the easiest thing to give up seems to be a job, because interestingly in our society, it's okay for a woman not to have a job. She's still okay in society. Well, it's not okay for a man not to have a job, right? So I think those things need to change too. I mean, there should be more and more men who say, I want to be, house husbands and take care of the home and the child because I'm better at it. Sure. And so be it, right? And, if the woman is doing better, she should be allowed to focus on her career. So I think that this piece needs a lot of dialogue. It's not just with the couple in question, it's with the whole family, because in these things, everybody gets involved and everybody has a say on, and an opinion on what it should be. And I think it's very important to have those dialogues very early and say that we really want to create an equal opportunity in workplace.
But that's true. And one thing that we have realized is, even if you cannot enter people's homes and tell them that this is what you need to change, right? This is a private space, and a lot of people may want to continue doing it. But at least to the limitation that as a workplace, what is it that you are doing to promote or propagate a certain stereotype to continue? One very small example, when we have seen companies saying that we don't call women between 12 noon to 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And we ask them, why don't you do that? And they're like, this is the time when they are taking care of making lunch and, doing other things, feeding everybody in their family and so on and so forth. But that is the time when we do conversations with the men in the team. Now, and this is a problem. They don't understand that every time that you are deciding, keeping the same social stereotype in mind, that this is when a woman would be doing this and this and this, including weekends, when exactly is she getting the time to actually focus on the work? And when the company itself is actually saying that, okay, sure, go ahead, but for the man, we still want you to be available all the time. Right? And it reflects itself in the job descriptions also, when anybody says that we want somebody with the firefighting spirit and the competitiveness, and somebody who is ready to be part of a very hyper environment, a killer attitude. All these things automatically do not provide the justification to have a balanced life at home also. And hence women don't really apply for those roles.
Yes, true. I mean, especially ones which require travel, which require her to be away from home. I mean, somehow those jobs get taken up by, the men. Yes, the stereotypes, I think, exist very, very strongly. But I think that's a natural progression of the first step of women being in the workplace. Put them in the stereotypes. And then over a period of time, women break those stereotypes. There are more role models which come about, which say that, yes, she can do, and not just do, she can do better than the men, and therefore, what does it take for us to get more women to do these kind of roles? So let's take the BPO industry, for example, right? Where, to a large extent, women were not allowed to, or not hired in factories, because they said that, it's a shift system, women cannot come to work in the nights, and, she requires to be with her family and blah, 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 right? Nobody tests it out. I mean, they probably, say that we will hire, but, there is this whole prejudice which is there in the head of the hiring manager, which says, oh, she's going to make excuses. She's going to say my son fell sick or daughter fell sick, and, she's going to stay at home. So, well, as the BPO industry, when it came, it just broke all those myths, because it is one industry which has got 50% women.
Yes.
Right? Working all shifts, and youngsters who are just coming in and saying that, what does, the shift have to do with it? And what does the work have to do with it to discriminate between gender? And therefore, you can see in that one particular industry that you have, both male and female working side by side. Of course, there is this huge advantage, which is that they will drop people back home as a requirement given by the government, saying, for safety. But that's more of the government coming to terms with, now that women are working all times of day and night, you need to make sure that the law and order is in place. So I think there is work to be done there. But besides that, I think that it's one industry which has really proved that, men and women can be equal in doing all roles.
Yeah, but here's something that I was told a long time ago when this same conversation was happening, was that BPO industry surprisingly, was able to do a very, 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 very tedious activity of doing a cost benefit analysis. That yes, I'm hiring, yes, there's an additional expense of dropping people home, and there's a cost associated with all your, all 24/7 operations and everything. And the salaries that I'm paying to these people is also less. Even if they leave, the cost of training them is still going to get balanced out by the expense that I'm doing. And that calculation for them allowed them to freely say that, okay, whatever you need will be taken care of. You need somebody to drop you home without any kilometers limitation and everything. This particular CBA that we talk about has not, I don't think any other industry has been able to do it, right? And do you think, because from where I stand, from where we look at it, this stands to be the major deterrent of why companies do not want to sit down and come up with a structured way of, or creating a strategy or prioritizing inclusion of women in the workplace or in their teams?
So I think that it's just it's a delusion that women are more expensive. There is this belief that women will quit and leave once they get married, right? So therefore the attrition of women is going to be higher. So the hiring manager has this whole paradigm in his head, which says, don't hire a woman because she's going to get married and go away. If she's already married, it means that she's going to go away to have a baby, which means there's maternity and now, the 6 months break, so don't hire her. Then, when she comes back, she's going to say that, oh, my children are sick or they have exams, so and all of this is real and, is there in the head of that hiring manager, right? So it's natural for him to say, oh my God, I do not want this species at all because, it's a burden for me, and therefore let me hire this man. If you look at attrition data, and I would actually encourage workplaces to do that, the attrition data between men and women is equal. Men leave for opportunities. If they get more money somewhere else, they jump to jobs. Women are more stable. And therefore, unless there is some kind of a, incident in her life which requires her to leave the job, she stays with it. It's changing, of course, in the younger generation. To a large extent, the attrition between male and female is relatively the same. So there's no real logical, rational reason for an employer to say that, I think women attract more and men stay longer in the company. It's not true. I think workplaces should actually check that out. Which then comes to the point of saying, now how do I retain these women? How do I make it easier for her to stay, right? And therefore look at, the policies which they have and say, can I really spend on making it easier for a woman in the workplace by, installing some of these policies? And I think that is when they will start thinking along the lines and it becomes, you develop a reputation for being women friendly, and therefore your brand improves. So I think there is work to be done there by companies.
But Namita, let's look at, in 1961, maternity benefit guidelines came in, and somebody in our team had just shared a clip today from this very old movie Earth, in which the actress had actually gone for an interview, and the person on the other side was telling her that, are you married? Because if you're married, then you will eventually have kids, and if you will have kids, we don't want to shoulder the burden of maternity leave. And the movie was released in 1983, and we are sitting in 2020 right now. The journey hasn't really changed that much, right? And we do not know now whether it's an issue of intent, right, or whether it's actually a cost concern. Because let's look at the number of laws that are being introduced from a policy and from a legal aspect. Maternity Benefit Act came in. Prevention of Sexual Harassment Act came in. We have now Transgender Persons Protection Act, which is there. Under labor law also, there are so many provisions that exist that any company, under Shops and Establishment Act, that companies and these establishments should be putting in place. And there is a cost which is associated with all these things also. And no matter how much you simplify these, even if you create a package and you say that, okay, this is how you need to plug it in, the adoption is not as positive as it should be, right? Otherwise, we will still not be talking about women's inclusion in the workplace. We would have already moved forward to talking about, let's say, people with disability, or in 2020 we should be just focusing on transgender and queer community for that matter, right? The journey for women has already been since almost 60 years now, right? And not much has changed. What exactly is missing? Are the laws flawed? Because that's also something that we hear from, especially from workplaces, that these laws are forcing me to do something which they should just leave it to me whether I want to create or not, right? But that's also something you can't afford to do, right? We can't wait for each leadership's conscience to realize this. So where exactly is the gap?
So I think putting a policy or a law in place is just one part of it. I mean, it's the first positive signal that that's the kind of country that we need to build, right? Which needs to be more inclusive and more diverse. But of course, everybody will look for loopholes, to see, how do I escape some of these which I do not adhere to or believe in. I think it still is a man's world, right? There are women which are pushing to transform it into a man and a woman's world, but and they are making progress. But to a large extent, it is still dominated by men who will define how much they will allow, what they will allow, why they will not allow, and there are good reasons which, if you're looking for something, you will of course find it. So if they're looking for reasons why women should not be hired, they definitely will find it. You should allow, after the law comes in, to allow the women in the workforce, or, whether it is, people with who are challenged, with disabilities, to come in, because you have this is your world. You have to be inclusive and representing the world in which you live. So they should be given those opportunities. But for that, it takes effort, and a lot of companies believe that this effort will mean that I will be giving up what I'm so used to. There is this one big thing which I need to speak about, is the thing called hireable like me. One of the biggest roadblocks which when women find is entry itself, right? Entry into a workforce. And so elite companies will say people should come from elite organizations, or elite business schools, or elite colleges, and everybody has their specs of where they will hire from, right? And then there is this little piece which, and all of this seems to be as if it is transparent and open to everyone, right? And then there's this last piece by the hiring manager, which is called the culture fit. right? And in that culture fit, and there are enough studies done of this, which say that most people want to hire someone like themselves.
True.
And that's where the woman drops out. Because when she is sitting there opposite, and there is a male manager who is, in this panel, he's looking at her and saying, she's not like me. And no, I don't think she'll fit our culture. It's not about the culture at all, right? So you're not allowing the culture of the organization to expand at all to include women, right? And that's why they have a tough time. So one of the things which I encouraged in my previous organizations was that every hiring panel should have women. Every hiring panel must have women. You will be amazed at how quickly, they convert into hiring more women.
Right.
One is, the woman over there watches another woman on the side and suddenly she's more relaxed, naturally relaxed. And two, she gives out her best and there is a woman there who's saying, oh yeah, she looks like me, she will work because, I understand what I had to do to make it work. And, it works for me. So, she hires. The same thing with promotions. You put a woman in the panel, you will have a lot more women getting promoted. These are simple things, and I can say with experience that they work, which organizations need to put in place if they really are serious about having more women, not just entering their workforce, but also making sure that, they move up the ladder.
So one time we had this dilemma wherein we were talking to a bunch of startup entrepreneurs, and we were saying that how did you go about doing this, right? Because some, the ratio or the percentage of women as entrepreneurs is also less, and majority when we see they're either the partners of the co-founders are usually related as partners, and married or not, the partner status is there. If that is not the case, then we have seen startups struggling a lot because majority two male people from the similar background, affinity bias, as you said it, will come together and will start something amazing. And with the best of the intent, may not be able to attract women candidates. And as we speak to different organizations in this journey, that how do you be diverse, uh, how do you attract more diverse talent for your team? We hear a lot of things, right? For example, focusing on the key roles first, right? Or no matter how much you attempt hiring or reaching out to women candidates, maybe they are not seeing startup as an industry or a specific industry as something which is desirable for them. There are stereotypes and perceptions that each and every group is carrying amongst themselves, and something very root level has to be created for them to shatter and get out of it. But once,
I just want, sorry if I'm interrupting you, but I think the reason why startups look a little confusing for genders and, for startups to look at women is startups can't afford to have a large workforce. So really they cannot afford to have people who come in, they train them, and then, they let go. And again, there is this whole, mindset that women are more likely to leave than men, right? On the other side, the women are looking at this and saying, this is a job for me, and I'm not getting into a place where I'm unsure of how long this job is going to last, because, startups have this bounce of, either they are in or they're out. So, they don't want to take the trouble of joining something which, tomorrow might not exist. So I think to both of them, there seems to be a little bit of more awareness which needs to be created in terms of saying that, start your company right by making it inclusive, by making it diverse, because, startups more than anyone else require a lot of innovation, a lot of different perspectives, a lot of representation of their customers. And therefore it's very, very critical more than anyone else for them to make sure that they have a very diverse workforce. So if they get it right and build the culture right at the start, then, growing that culture would be relatively much more easier than, a larger company adapting to it.
but Namita, there are no data points for them to, to get that. And right now I'm talking about data points in terms of there's no comparison that says that if we are diverse, we will grow X amount more than what we could have grown otherwise, right? There are no studies.
There is a McKinsey study which says that having more women in your workforce it means you'll have 21% more profits.
I know we gave this to startups. They said Indian context mein nahi hai.
Some excuse.
Now we need to create the study in the Indian context, right, where things will change. But we'll definitely do that. What is, sorry, I think I have to frame this question right. One thing that keeps coming up every time that we have spoken about startups making things inclusive, or recently in the past 4 months, what we have done is we have been observing all the online conferences and webinars that have been happening. They were happening earlier also. It's just that now that the whole world is online, every publicity thing happens online, and you can see it on your Twitter thread. And all these panels, majority of them, be it a 30-member panel or a 15-member panel, they will have maybe 1 or 2 women there, right? And similar thing that we see in otherwise team structures as well, where usually there's a token representation. And we start digging in just to see why exactly this is happening, right? And except for those individuals who were able to patiently sit with us and run us through, how many people they reached out, or some people just instantly accepted that we did not think like this. बहुत ही subconscious process था, ठीक है, it was a blind spot for us, we will work on it. But the majority of conversation always came out that we reached out to so many, but nobody accepted it. So it's once again handed over as a fault of the other counterpart, or it's the society which is actually to be blamed, because problem is at a root level. Yes, of course, the funnel, if you will see, less women going to school, less women going to college, less women entering workplace, less women becoming leader. Yes, the funnel has definitely contributed to it. But somewhere in this whole ecosystem, the blame cushion keeps passing from one person to another person, and the buck never seems to stop, right? So here's just a very pinpointed question on, if we are just talking about companies, the role that they can play, not going into education system and this and everything else, just about companies, the role that they can play, and not even growth, entry level, right? What are the 3 reasons that women generally would apply? I mean, you may choose to answer. You can give the 3 things that we see and we will automatically apply, or 3 things that deter us from applying to be part of a specific organization. This is more for companies to understand that if your intent is actually to attract more women to apply for for the jobs, get these 3 things right. What would those be?
So one is, I think, the one which is very important is to be seen as an affirmative action company, which means that they declare that they believe in diversity. So, whether it's their websites or whether it is, their different channels of social media, for them to actually state, and, the CEO to state that I believe in diversity and inclusivity. Because once you make that promise, to the world, you have to stick to it, because now your actions, right, will mean, people are watching those actions, and, it has to, all of this has to translate into action. So that, I think, would be the first. The second is the feedback, from employees inside on whether it's a safe place to work. See, we cannot underestimate the one big reason why women join some companies and do not join some companies. So, and that is it a safe place to work? And when they say safe place to work, it's not just the physical safeness of it. Sometimes, yes, commute makes a difference. Sometimes, how am I commuting makes a difference. Your shift makes a difference. But to a large extent, when I come into my workplace, do I have the policies which will deter, certain behaviors by others? So, for example, a very strong anti-sexual harassment policy. Does it exist? And how is it translating into the consequence? When I complain, I mean, how is it handled? When there is a grievance, where I find that there is a gender discrimination, how seriously does the company take it? Most companies are amazed as to how much of what happens internally is discussed externally, right? And today with social media and the glass doors and the likes, everyone speaks everything openly, and there's nothing to hide. Everything is on on an open platform. Therefore, you have to walk the talk. You have to ensure that the safety is a priority for you, and it is one of the questions which gets asked in the best employer surveys, that do you find it a safe place to work? And for women, that means different. For men, it means different. An example could be, I disagree with something and I state my disagreement. Does it continue to be a safe place for me, or do people hate the fact that I've got a different perspective, or that I protest or I challenge the management? So these are called the cultural nuances which companies have to build. They're very delicate. They're the intangibles, but they really make or break in deciding what kind of people want to come and work for you. Because it will also define, since people want to hire more people like themselves, you will end up with either trash, or you will end up with some of the best talent that you can get, simply because you have very early set very, very clear metrics on what kind of an organization you want to be, what kind of a culture you want to create, and what would it look like when you create a culture like this. So I think the third one is role models. Are there enough role models in the organization? And when you see role models, it basically means that you have a formal or informal mentoring system. You have a training programs which allow women to take the break and would come back, sort of equip them back with the skills which are required for them to re-enter the workforce. Little pieces like this which say that she can take those breaks and she can come back, and it still is for me a secure workplace. So I think these three would really top the reasons why women find some organizations attractive to work in, and some organizations which they would stay away from.
And that has, these are very three dedicated points. I thank you so much for sharing them. Makes so much difference for companies to know where exactly to focus. And with this, and here I would request for you to go back to your experiences also, Namita, because a lot of companies may put these policies and make these statements, right? But at the end of the day, it's the language of the culture and the language of your experience, of a particular team that makes so much difference. And language, be it written, how things are being shared with you, or the verbal and the non-verbal cues that your team members are throwing at you, right? They are the ones which make or break the whole aspect of inclusion in a team, right? How has your experience been? I mean, I of course have so many experiences where I felt that this is a positive place and this is not a positive place for me to be part of. But in your entire journey, and you've been part of some amazing organizations, right? But workplace is not just always limited to the organization that we are part of, and these are big companies, right? And these are big workplaces with different global aspects and cultures coming in together. How has this language and these micro, aspects of human interaction in workplace been observed by you? What are some of the memories that have made the difference, in your work experience in a company?
So I think I was lucky because I was a woman. So, I could experience some of these things firsthand. I didn't need, somebody to translate it for me. And two was that I was in the position of being the head of human resources, which is why, it became easier for me to formulate those policies which were conducive for women at the workplace. So I remember that a lot of us have a tendency to just accept some of the so-called rules because it's all men. So, I was the only woman in the leadership position. So, the rest of them were men. So I remember this one incident where, for lack of or the inability of people finding time in any other time, we selected a holiday, which was a festival, for a meeting. It was a half a day meeting. And I was grudging about it because, it was a festival. I needed to be at home. And everybody said, we are just not able to get people, so we'll finish before lunch. So, please accommodate. So my typical way would have been to say, okay, this makes sense. This is my career. I don't want to make a scene. Okay. And let me just go and, get up early, finish my, whatever has to be done, and, get to the workplace and pretend that all is okay. And I said, I would be failing women if I pretend that it was okay. Right. So I rarely ever used to wear a sari at the workplace. So that day I wore a silk sari with flowers in my hair and went to the office. Everybody looked at me at the meeting. I mean, it was just us at the meeting. And, the rest of the company was closed. And they just gawked and said, what happened? So I said, nothing happened. You have pulled me out from a festival to come to work. So, from here, I'm getting back home into the festival. And there was a sudden, wave of guilt on everybody's face and saying, oh my God, I mean, I could see how uncomfortable, but this is because they were they were really nice, right? But it hit the point home in no better fashion in saying that you have disturbed something which is not a priority. So one of the men actually had the audacity to say, hey, you know what? We all have the festival too. And we are going to go home. So it's okay. We are all going to go and join the festival lunch. So I turned to him and I said, your wife is there making that payasam for you. I'm that wife sitting here. That's the difference, right? And you will not believe we finished in about 1.5 hours. It was a 4-hour meeting. Everybody moved very quickly, sent it, and said, I hope you're okay. Please go back home. Get back to the festival. Now there is one part of me which was embarrassed by it because I sort of thought I made a scene, but I think it is very, very important for women to make that scene. In saying that you are sometimes getting into our space. Let's take the current work from home. Sure. I know that women are, men too, but women are more battered about this because there are no lines anymore, right? They are on these calls day in and day out. There are children which are screaming who are not going to school. There is no help thanks to the lockdown. So, they are managing this. It's really trying. And for the first time, I think, both men and women are coming in as equal partners, or at least trying to be equal partners, and sort of manage their home. So the pandemic's silver lining is really that there can be a different way of working, which is conducive to both men and women, and making them their partnership a little bit more equitable. So I think for me that is one incident which I remember. The second one was, I thought that I need to create better policies for women. So I created this one which said that people with the children below the age of 3 or 5, can work from home twice a week or something like that. And the next week I had this group which was, of young girls standing outside my door, and, I let them in and I said, yeah, what is that? Are you waiting for me? And they said, we are sorry, ma'am, we needed to discuss this policy with you. I said, yeah, sure. Do you need it to be changed and kind of stuff? They said, why have you made this only for women?
Very true. That was going to be my next question. Yes.
And why wasn't it made for men? And I said, oh my God, look at the mindset in this whole, wanting to make it easier for women. I have put them in the same silos and the same buckets. Whereas if this policy was open even for men, they would take off twice a week to take care of the children or, their home, and allow the women to be at the workplace, right? And that's when I realized that this equitableness is not about giving them certain, some margins for the women. It is for making for both men and women, equal kind of policies. And I think that really needs a very different mindset to allow that next generation into the new world of policies.
No, that's true. These have been some realizations that we keep seeing. One of the companies had introduced this, shopping vouchers policy, this shopping allowance, and they actually realized that it were more men who had used it than the women in the team, because the instant understanding was that it's women who like to shop more, so men will not be using it. And at the end of the quarter, they realized that it's men who have used it more, and just because there was more structure to the allowance and they knew where exactly to go and buy things from, and so on and so forth. So it's these realizations. Same thing with a paternity policy, right, or parental policy. When companies are actually just creating policies and norms or provisions for one specific gender, somewhere in the complete ecosystem the imbalance continues to happen.
Very true.
Right. And that's something that needs to go. There's a question for you, which I can, because we're talking about your experiences, I can just like plug it in right now. Someone wants to know, have you ever faced sexism at workplace, and how did you handle it? What advice would you offer to young professionals navigating this space?
Yes, you would. Sometimes it is subtle, sometimes it is not so subtle. I think one needs to come with the right framework on how you handle it. Do you want to feel tearful? Do you want to be naive? Do you want to feel outraged? And you go through all of that, right? If it's new, I mean, it's natural for you to feel it. But if you are in the wicked world or the big world, I think there will be cases where you would come across people who don't think of women as you would want them to think of. And I think dealing with it is really about dealing with your response. I think what is most important and what you can control is really your response, rather than to believe that, no, it should not have happened, and stop blaming yourself. It wasn't about what you wore, what you did, how I said it. It has to be about me. I mean, women just go on and on about it. It's not, it has nothing to do with you. It has to do with that other person. It was an abnormal kind of reaction and a behavior. The person needs to be set in place, but do that. And this is easier said than done. Do it with being as unemotional as you can. Very clear, say no, say I did not like this behavior, and I will not tolerate it. I think if that is the way you deal with it, people get the message loud and clear. They realize that there is no drama around the whole thing, but there is a very clear message that this is not appreciated, and therefore, the chances of it repeating are lower.
Yeah, but the peer and the power play does not allow it to play out like that, right, Nandita? It's the reality where early entrants or somebody, even if they have, either you have nothing to lose or you have everything to lose, right? Somebody who is just starting in their journey, how do they deal with losing everything out if they speak up?
Okay. One of the things, message
Because this is a dilemma that comes our way, right? Every time we give an advice like this, that you should speak about it, right?
So one of the message which I want to give women is that you are creating more boundaries than you think. These boundaries don't exist. Most of them are in your mind, right? There is some which are there, unfortunately, in some companies, some people, and that's natural even for men, right? Those boundaries do exist even for them. But stop creating these boundaries in your head in saying, oh, if I do this, I'm going to lose my job. If I do this, people don't like me. Most of it is just your imagination. There is a way to handle these things, and there is a way of messing it up, right? If you get it right, and if people realize that you are being very objective and very rational about it, most people back off, right? These are not criminals which are there in front of you, right? So we exaggerate a lot of what these people can do, the lot of power which is there in these people, but it doesn't exist. And most organizations today are much more aware than previously about what can happen, what reputational damage can be created if women speak out. Right? Look at the Me Too movement. From where to where, it has gone and toppled some of the biggest names. If these women had not spoken about it, then, the whole women power would not have come together to make, some of these things happen. So I think we have to stop making excuses that the world is going to fall apart or, all around us if we just speak up. It's not true. I have spoken up always, and very frankly, I mean, sometimes you get a little slap in the face or a, tap on your knuckles kind of stuff. That's fine. That happens to men too. When they speak up, it happens to them. They don't stop speaking up. So I don't, understand why women should stop. On the contrary, more and more women need to start speaking up and talking.
Yeah, that branches out into two things. One, I will ask this question first, or maybe I'll park it there. As more and more women are actually becoming part of the workplace and they're growing it, we have also seen that even if you don't do a thorough study and you see that wherever there are women rising in the leadership in any organization, the culture is somehow more conducive for other women to become part of it. Is this something that really holds true? And especially if we look at the entire journey, because then it comes up as a burden, right? That now that you have reached somewhere, now while you are doing whatever you are supposed to be doing for your job and your career and everything else, there's an additional responsibility on you to make sure that this path does not get there's no landslide that happens on the path that you have walked on, and other people should be able to follow it also. So is this something that you have also experienced, and do you see it happening? Right. And
okay, so I think it happens sometimes and it doesn't happen sometimes. A lot of women, when in their climbing up the ladder, start behaving like men and start pretending that I came here not because I'm a woman. I came here because I'm a person. It's great. I mean, and it's good. It's a good attitude to have, but do not be apologetic about being a woman, right? Because your constraints and your journey is very different from that of man. And if other women can see that journey, it gives them a lot of strength and a lot of confidence that they can do this too. And that's why role modeling becomes important. But a lot of us, and I've been in some parts I've been guilty of it, is we pretended that I did this journey because I'm me, right? And I don't understand why other women cannot do it. But the fact is that everybody cannot do it. And it's therefore the job of both men and women to ensure that, their sisters and their daughters and, their wives have an easier time in the workplace than, their previous generations did. And therefore, it requires a little bit of effort on the part of those women who made it to the top to sort of make it easier, because, to create the policies or, to question some of the policies, or to ask, why don't we have a creche which makes it easier, right, for a woman? And then, there will be the whole male reasons of saying, why do we need it? Pretending as if they don't have children, I think if we do that, you will find that there will be a lot more men which will find that this is an attractive workplace. Today they're pretending that this is not their need, but it could be, because I know of some couples who find that the male company's creche is better, so he has a son in that creche where he goes out and he picks up, and it's fantastic, right? And if you ask him one of the reasons of why that organization for him is important, it would be this the reason of the fact that I have a creche in the campus, or close to the campus. So I think those lines will get blurred over the next decade. And if organizations really are forward looking, it's time for them to really start asking the question and saying, before it's too late, to say that what are some of the policies which I would need to have in place to make sure that I attract enough women in the workplace.
I think that covered the question also. So here's my next one. From a global perspective, in the past 20 years at least, a lot of companies are now being influenced. It doesn't matter whether it's happening in India or not, but it's happening somewhere in their counterpart offices. It's happening somewhere. And a we are talking about, and social media has also allowed exchange of information to become more fluent and more updated. I already know what PwC study happened last year and what were women thinking last year and how workplaces were last year. Earlier, maybe it will take 5 years for somebody to, just pass it on and bring it to me. And by that time, maybe the information is already outdated. Considering the environment that we are living in and the space and the speed at which this information is circulating, is the growth in proportion? When I say growth, evolution of workplaces is in proportion with the mindset, in terms of bringing the whole inclusion of women in the workplace environment. Because we know now that as a customer, women have become more important. Right. Somewhere there's a dichotomy in that also, because customer, if they have become important, it's only because they're becoming more economic independent. So you now know that they are also spending money and they are also making decisions. They can also buy cars. They can also buy, houses and everything else. They are traveling way a lot more than how they used to travel earlier. So in the eyes of businesses, as a customer, women are definitely becoming the center of attention. And we see it changing as a trend in the advertisements that they showcase. Like you can immediately point out somebody's mistake in an advertisement and they're very quick to correct those things, right? The complete strategy is getting revamped. But internally, that's not the same thing which is happening. Yes, Glassdoor is one of the places where people can come and they can talk about it. Is the growth and is the focus in it? It's not really at the same level, Nandita. And what is the reason for that? I mean, if I'm important as a customer, that's only because I can spend money. But the only way I can spend money is if I'm making money. And the only way I can make money is if I have a job and a career. Right? So somewhere a gap or the whole chain is not really streamlined. What is it that business are not able to get?
I think it has started, and I think it will accelerate much more. As more and more women are educated and more women are comfortable with taking jobs and moving them to careers, I think that number will increase, and you will see a large, group of people starting to join organizations. For example, in the IT industry where I worked, we had 50% women at the entry level, right? Which took almost a decade, for us to reach there. But it will happen as more and more get pumped in at the entry level. You will see a larger number of them will come in. Today, it seems slow, but it is still moving in the right direction. So we should not get disheartened by that. We just have to wait for a little bit more time. We should get the girls, to energize themselves, accelerate themselves, and say, it's the best time to be a woman. Go for it, and just do your thing.
So last 2 points on this one, questions actually. First one is COVID-19 happened, right? And at our end, and I'm sure you're also looking at it, that whether this is going to be a progressive, whether this is going to actually allow for more women to be part of workplaces, because earlier me sitting at home and working from home was not really real work or being considered as a serious professional, right? You're not serious about your job because you can sleep anytime and you can do anything that you want anytime, right? And until and unless you are going to an office or you're stepping out of your home in a certain clothing, the demeanor, you were not really considered a serious professional. But now that has changed in the past 4 or 5 months. People have created this empathy that yes, you can work even if you're at home. But at the same time, economic downturn for companies is also going to make them cut down on a lot of costs. Right? People are already asking team members to leave and less hiring is going to be there. And once again, the key role hires will start. From where you see it, and I'm sure you would have been seeing it way a lot more than how we are thinking about it. Is this going to push the whole women economic independence journey forward? Is this going to be a push, or is this going to actually put us maybe 10 years back or 20 years back?
No, I don't think so. I don't think that people will single out women and say that, I'm going to get these people out of the workforce. work from home on the contrary has proved to be extremely productive. And very, very positive for most of industries. But they continue to say that a large percentage of our workforce will continue to work from home, right? I'm not going by the numbers. Some of them are saying 60, 70%, all of that will change the minute all offices open and the pandemic is over. But what will stay is the fact that people can work from home, and more importantly, they can work from anywhere and not just that same location. Right? You don't have to be in Bangalore if your office is if your company is in Bangalore. You could work from Bhubaneswar, which means look at how much we have enlarged the talent pool.
That's true.
Because they can actually work from anywhere in the country. They can work globally from anywhere in the world. So and the forward-looking companies are going to really ping on this and say, how do I leverage this, right? It won't go back to normal. There are things called transitions, and there are, a generation of men and women who have to manage the transitions when you're moving from one paradigm to another. For example, the baby boomers had to work very hard after the war to make sure that, things became normal. Similarly, when women were being taken into the workforce, they had to work doubly hard to make sure that they were perceived to be as competent as men, right? Because, at the end of it, you have to break that mindset. It takes a long time to break the mindset. There's no use crying about it. You just have to accept it. And the fact is that women at that time pretended that they had no other commitments like the family. They had to pretend as if, I'm coming to work 100%, and it's good. It's great. And those women actually paved the way for the other generation of women to enter the workforce. Similarly, with this work from home, both men and women have to prove that they can be extremely productive and not take advantage of the fact that they can jump into the kitchen, do their cooking while there is a meeting going on, be on mute and, kind of stuff. Because, you can't trick some of the people some of the time. You can't trick all the time. So it will come through, your lack of authenticity will come through. And organizations and managers are much smarter than we think, and they will know who's doing what, right? So I think it's very critical in as long as this pandemic continues and the work from home continues, that people actually take this, make doubly sure that they come across as very productive, as very professional, not in their night clothes. I know people are not really watching you, but the professionalism has to continue, saying, what are you trying to prove here? You're trying to prove that this is a new paradigm, the way we work, and it is going to be as productive and as professional as if I'm in the office, right?
That's true.
You have to make sure that happens. And that's when, the difference between who's professional, who's professional, non-professional will happen. And, whether it's the men who are let go or the women who are let go will really depend on that rather than the gender, I think.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I have so many questions. I know it's already 6:07. Do you have time? 10 more minutes, or
Yeah.
should we wrap up?
Yeah, sure.
All right. So one very important thing for the HR, because there's so much happening in the past 4 months, right? There's too much, and the busiest and the most burnt out people that I see in the companies right now, maybe because they're the only ones that we talk to, are the HR right now, because so much learning that they have to catch up with. Everything is just changing very frantically for them, right? As it is, yes, HR always needs to be watching out on what are the needs of the companies right now. What are the changing trends that HR should look out for when they're looking at basic employee well-being, right? And inclusive well-being. Now that everybody is at home, whatever you create will be for everyone. What is it that they should look out for?
So I think it's a terrific time to be in HR because it's becoming one of the most critical functions for business. Two is because important things like, how do I create a culture with a workforce which is now across the country or across the world? How do I make sure that there is teaming which is happening? How do I make sure that people are not getting burnt out? How do I make sure that there is a connectivity and people are not getting depressed because, they're at home for a longer period of time, some of them alone? How do I make sure that people understand confidentiality? And not everybody has got office rooms, which they can afford. So, people are there with, the pressure cooker going off and, the cooking happening and kind of stuff. So, giving pointers which basically empathizes with the condition which they are in, and therefore providing your useful tips and learnings to, how to create your own professional space in your home, during these times. I think is important. One of the things which I would really encourage HR to do is to really question whether you need all full-time employees.
Oh, okay.
Because, there is this whole attractive and, especially for the millennials, which want both work and play at the same time. It's very important for them to have, the gig economy to be cultivated, which says that, I can get in experts for maybe 4 hours a day for 6 months, pay them well, which makes it, worth their time. And then they go and, do some other hobby in wildlife photography or something like that. And then they come back. A lot of careers are going to really take shape like this. And it's very important for HR to start creating career structures which can actually accommodate these kind of roles. Instead of the same old, job description, everybody has to do the same thing, everyone has the same KRA. Start customizing it to people, start making sure that, how do I measure productivity now? How do I measure, whether, how do I measure management? Because the manager is in one place and, the teams are all scattered across, different locations. So how do I make sure that, management and leadership is communicated, that there is a strength in teaming? All these things require different kind of training skills. And therefore HR, it's very important that they are up to it and actually proactively start creating these programs which can assist people and which people can, take on their own time, right? Education is going to see a dramatic change. I mean, while we're talking about corporate workplaces, one of the most exciting places which really workplaces to change would be education and healthcare.
That's true.
Right? And jobs are going to open up, fantastically over there. And therefore, finding out what are the new skills which will be required and what kind of training it requires. Because, humans have an ability to learn and unlearn very quickly. And therefore, taking the opportunity of saying, what is it that I need to learn and what I need to unlearn, having a grasp on that would really, put people at an advantage. And I think HR plays a very, very important role in sort of navigating that in the organization today.
Yes, and I think somewhere HR is taking care of everybody, but who takes care of HR is something which is very difficult. You can't be looking at a mirror and say that I'll take care of myself first, but that's something that needs to be done with these constant changes and fast-paced changes. Somewhere HR's learning and development programs never get panned out.
They learn on the job, I guess.
They learn on the job. That's true. That's true. Okay. I'm. This has been. There's so many questions that I would have still wanted to ask if the time would have not run out. But I'm going to be very selfish and ask you one very last question, Nandita. What does an ungendered workplace and world look like to you?
In the entry form, I mean, when they get admitted to the organization, a form which doesn't ask about gender, a form which does not ask about which sect, which community you come from, all the unnecessarily really requirements. Just put your name, give your skills, and just get evaluated only on that and not on the rest of the baggage today, which we pay so much attention to. I think an organization which can create a culture of actually viewing it only with that lens of saying, I'm viewing a person who brings these skills to the table and who can add value to the organization, and nothing beyond that is important, I think really would be an ungendered workplace.
Very happy to hear that. That's the journey. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Nandita. I learned so much, and I'm sure everyone else who has been hearing it has learned so much also. And
I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
yes, me too. Me too. Thank you, everyone. And we will reach out to Nandita you again, as and when we can find again some slot in your super busy schedule.
Thank you.
And talk to you again about it. Thank you. Take care, everyone. This is a wrap from our end.
Thank you so much, Nandita, for your time. Bye.
Bye.